Crack, baby, crack. Show me your real. Smack, baby, smack. Is that all that you feel?
Okay, you surprised me. For some reason, I thought you were going to pick like the Gene Genie or something like that.
I'd contemplated Gene Genie, and I contemplated Driving Saturday. I was pulling up Panic in Detroit's lyrics.
Or how about
I had
Watch That Man?
That was another one.
Yeah.
That was another one.
What's up, guys?
Yeah, no, we went with Cracked Actor.
That's a good choice. What's up, guys? It's Sound of Music time again. It's that time again.
It's the most wonderful time. All right, we need to stop. We need to stop. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. You know what you know what it's been.
It's
been a while.
Oh my god. So many songs. I want to apologize in advance for two things. A, Andy singing, and B, that I'm a little under the weather, so I may cough and sound a little off, and I apologize. So,
but mostly apologize for my singing.
Yeah, I more apologize for that, and for my voice won't be have those as sexy sultry tones as they normally do. So, what can I say?
Oh, sorry. Locking out noise on my end. We just what are we on episode? I don't even know what episode we're on, but we just continue to be amateurs here. But it's okay because I don't have a reason. All right, let's get into it. What album are we talking about today?
We are talking about Aladdin Sane.
Ooh, Aladdin Sane. Who's that by?
A guy named David Bowie.
David Bowie. I know that guy. That guy's it's pretty good. Pretty good.
So by the way, I recently finished reading the book 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, but in the book there's an astronaut that goes.
Of course, it's one of my favorites.
Oh, well, excellent, cool. And there's an astronaut that goes to space, and his name is David Bowman, and I was like, wait a minute.
That's right. Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, back to the subject.
Those, Space Oddity Space Odyssey comparisons a lot on the Space Oddity episode.
Yes.
And I will continue to get those two titles mixed up, Oddity Odyssey.
Yeah.
And swap them around with the wrong medium, but that's okay. Ziggy Stardust. So, I've been really excited to talk about this one.
You just said Ziggy Stardust.
Oh, Jesus. I just want to say to all of you listeners, it's been a pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed our content and what we've done. But
he's thrown in the towel.
There's only so far I can go with the unprofessionalism, and I think I went too far. I'm so sorry.
So Aladdin Sane.
Aladdin Sane, not Ziggy Stardust. Aladdin Sane.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really excited to talk about this one. As you pointed out at the start of the episode, we've had quite a few pushbacks with just you not feeling well and other things. And it's funny because I was saying to you off mic before we started recording that I'm getting tired of Aladdin Sane. Even though I love this record, I'm tired of it. I'm ready to listen to Diamond Dogs. Move on.
I'm always ready to listen to Diamond Dogs, but I digress.
But on the flip side, of course. On the flip side, probably the most prepared on any record we've talked about on the show so far. So
nice.
Why don't we get into it?
Sure. Let's get right into it then. You want to give us our little intro here about the album?
Yeah. So, Aladdin Sane, released on RCA Records, April 13th, 1973. It is the follow-up to his breakthrough, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. What's really fascinating about this record is the album cover is probably the most iconic David Bowie image.
I was gonna say that same thing. Yeah, it's probably like his most iconic album cover that I can think of.
Album cover and just image in general.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating because aside from the Gene Genie, I don't think there's really any other tracks on this one that like your average person would know very well. maybe
Panic in Detroit, and that's about it.
Maybe Panic in Detroit. Yeah, I was gonna say The Prettiest Star, but no, I take that back. Yeah, maybe if there's another track, Panic in Detroit. But I just think that's interesting that it's, again, the album cover's so iconic. You see T-shirts and posters. You know, when he passed away a few years ago, this was the image that you saw all throughout online. But there's really one like really well-known song on the record. So I don't know. I've always found that interesting.
I have too, yeah. And I always, for me personally, it was always an album that I overlooked a little bit from this period, more so than albums like, because you have iconic albums like Ziggy Stardust and Hunky Dory and Diamond Dogs. So it always kind of fell to like a sort of second tier for me for this part of his career, you know. And it's not really anything to do with the album. It's more so like the songs. Just, you know, when you first get into Bowie, like you said, there really isn't a lot of hits off of this one, except for maybe the Gene Genie, and they don't really play anything off or on the radio. So it's a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is in that aspect. And, you know, going off of that a little bit, what I've always liked about this record is, to me, this just sounds like a more dirtier version of Ziggy Stardust.
Yes, yeah.
That addition to, and we'll talk about lineup in a second, but that addition to pianist Mike Garson really just added so much to this sound. But we'll get into that in a second. Just a little more on Aladdin Sane, a little more background. The name of the album is a pun on Aladdin Sane. And as far as Bowie characters go, even though it looks a little different, we've got the lightning bolt on his face now, that Aladdin Sane is actually Ziggy Stardust. He's always been referred to as Ziggy Goes to America. But the character that he's emulating, I guess, is still technically Ziggy.
Is it supposed to be like another persona of Ziggy? Or is it just like I've always wondered that. Like, is it just like another side of him or something? Or?
I guess just like the American persona of him.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, I think I've always, just between the image and just a lot of the songs on this record, I've always associated it as like Ziggy meets Iggy Pop, but I guess that doesn't really make sense because that's partially what Ziggy Stardust was originally based off of, was Iggy Pop, as well a few other things that we touched based on the last episode. But yeah, why don't we get into band members?
Well, the band members are largely the same. As far as like the actual personnel on the album, we have, of course, Mr. Bowie on vocals, guitar, harmonica, saxophone, Moog, and mellotron. The great Mick Ronson on, I think, is his swan song from this period, unless you want to count Pinups. But as far as like studio albums, this would be his swan song.
That's correct.
And then Trevor Bolder on bass guitar and Mick Woodmansey on drums, which it's the same basic lineup as the Ziggy Stardust album, except that you have some additional personnel. Of course, you mentioned Mike Garson on piano, Ken Fordham on saxophone. There's quite a few people on here. Wow. Brian Bucks Wilshaw on saxophone and flute. Juanita Honey Franklin on backing vocals. And there's two other backup singers, Linda Lewis and G.A. McCormick. And Ken Scott produced the album and engineered it as well.
So I'm just looking at that, and I didn't realize, like Ziggy, this is another one that Tony Visconti did not produce.
Yeah, it's weird.
I could have sworn that he was part of this period, both Ziggy Stardust and Aladdin Sane. I'm going to have to do some research on that after this episode, because I know that he, of course, didn't produce every single David Bowie record, but as far as like the pinnacle lineup of albums, I did not know that he didn't produce these two records. So that's fascinating to me, because when I think of David Bowie and people, or that really made Bowie, Tony Visconti is one of those people that always comes to mind.
I went ahead and cheated, and it doesn't look like he really came back until David Live and Young Americans. So actually, but it's oddly enough, the David Live album is the next one he produced.
So he didn't do Diamond Dogs either?
Nope, it was Diamond Dogs was produced by Bowie himself.
No kidding.
Yep.
No kidding. I knew that actually about Diamond Dogs.
Yeah.
That I knew that was self-produced. I knew he was on Tony Visconti. That is, I knew he was on Young Americans, and I know he's all of Berlin as
Yep.
well as Scary Monsters. But this period specifically, I didn't know that he didn't produce.
Interesting. You know.
Yeah. But speaking of people, when thinking about, important people in Bowie's career, along with Tony Visconti, you added on Mike Garson. You had mentioned Mike Garson in addition to the lineup, the Spiders from Mars lineup
Yep.
being the same. And I just got to talk about him for a second because, man, is this guy so important in the David Bowie story.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little bit of background on Mike Garson. Bowie has always been into jazz and was looking for a way to incorporate that in his music. And I'm not going to get into the whole backstory onto how he came across Mike Garson, but Mike Garson was and still is a jazz pianist.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been a guy that's been on and off throughout the David Bowie story. After this record, Diamond Dogs, it's a clean slate. He gets rid of everybody in the Spiders from Mars lineup. The only guy that plays on that record is Mike Garson.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Garson, to me, is so important in the David Bowie sound, specifically on this record, specifically on Diamond Dogs. He plays a pinnacle role on Young Americans. He did some stuff with Bowie throughout the 80s, and then he comes back in the 90s. And he pretty much played with Bowie from like outside on, as well as being a part of his touring lineup. I can't just like rave about this guy enough. He's one of my favorite piano players. I got to see him live a couple years ago where he did like a David Bowie tribute tour, and he had Earl Slick, who we'll talk about when we get to Station to Station. He had who else did he have? So many people that played with Bowie throughout the years. Just a hell of a musician.
Yeah, and he really did have quite the introduction to Bowie's career in this album. I think he shines more than just about anybody aside from, maybe the man himself, Bowie. He has some excellent moments in this record.
And not only with Bowie, but with Mick Ronson. I mean, we've gone on about, how great of a musician Mick Ronson was, and quite frankly, an underrated composer. We always think of Mick Ronson, the guitar player, but as a composer, well underrated. I just wish we got one or two more records with both Mick Ronson and Mike Garson, because the two of them together on this record, the contrast of, Garson's piano playing and Mick Ronson's guitar and his arrangements, is just unlike any of some of other Bowie's records, quite frankly.
It's quite a drastic difference, even just from the previous album. Even though it's still the same character that Bowie's playing, and it's still the same period and of course, yes, like the glam tinge is on both of the albums, but I feel like they are quite different albums.
I feel like they are too. I listened to this, and to me, this sounds like the logical follow-up or next step to Ziggy Stardust. But yeah, that was my Mike Garson rant. This guy's played with other people throughout the years. He's played with some more contemporary artists like Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails, St. Vincent, apparently, which that I didn't know about. One of these days I will dive into a solo catalog, because I feel like it would be stuff that I would be into.
Cool. And then we'll do a Mike Garson discography discussion series.
Yeah, there you go. Like 50 years from now, we'll do a Mike Garson discography discussion. That sounds like a plan.
Okay, I'm ready to get into it. Did you want to just say you usually talk about charting and stuff? Do you want to just talk about that?
Yes.
Because it looks like it's got the chart information here, but I'll let you go for it.
Sure. So it was, or at least I had it. Oh, here we go. In the UK, it did chart number 1. On the US Billboard 200, it charted at number 17. And just some other fun facts about this record. It is placed at number 279 in the 2012 up-to-date Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Albums of All Time.
Yay, that's...
Yeah, we won't go there.
Yeah.
And then number 77 on Pitchfork Media's list of top 100 albums of the 1970s. And if there's a publication that gets under my skin more than Rolling Stone, it would be Pitchfork. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm ready, man. Let's get into it. Singles. What was released as the Gene Genie was released as a single, I assume?
Gene Genie was released as a single. Gene Genie, and the B-side was Ziggy Stardust. And then Drive-In Saturday was also released as a single as the A-side, and the B-side to that was a cover of Chuck Berry's Round and Round, which I believe we did talk about on the last episode.
Yeah, I think we did, yeah.
But those were the only singles.
Wow.
We mentioned a few episodes ago that the Prettiest Star was released as a single, Around the Man Who Sold the World. I can't remember if that was one of the Arnold Corn songs or not, but there is an earlier rendition of that song. I happen to like the version on Aladdin Sane a heck of a lot better. But yeah, that's it as far as singles for this era.
Cool.
All right, so let's get into it. Side 1, track 1, opener, Watch That Man.
Watch That
I'm just
Man.
I'm just gonna start out and say, in addition to like the Iggy influence, I hear a lot of Stooges specifically, which makes sense because around this time, Bowie was also producing the Stooges' Raw Power.
Oh, okay.
Bowie had a role on resurrecting the Stooges. The Stooges recorded their debut in '69 and then Funhouse in 1970, and quit the band after. But Bowie was a huge Stooges fan. The Stooges are one of my favorite bands, and Bowie resurrected them and produced Raw Power. And that came out in '73 as well, I believe. So my point is, it makes total sense that there would be a lot of influence.
Yeah.
But in addition to the Stooges, this record to me is heavily Stones influence.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is also ironic because there's a Stones cover on this record.
And I mean, and then in general, I guess you'd say, just because the Stones are this kind of band, just very like early rock R&B sounding, you know. I think you hear a lot of that, especially in this first track, you know. Yeah,
for sure. And what an opener. Big bombastic opener, just like 5 years in that sense. I've always loved this song. I love the backing musicians on this track as well. This is for sure Bowie emulating Mick Jagger, and it's great. I've always loved this song.
I like it. I think for me it's a bit more middle of the road, to be honest, but I really do like the song, you know. It's not a bad song by any means. It's the only reason I think I say that is because there are so many other songs on this album that I think are way better. But yeah,
and I would agree with that.
The idea, like, I'm always down to hear like Bowie do that, like we were talking about, that Stones early rock kind of sound, and it's pretty crunchy. I like the guitar. Mick Ronson sounds really good on it, and it's a catchy tune, you know. But like I said, it's kind of just, to me, sort of middle of the road rock track. You know, it doesn't stand out particularly, but I enjoy it.
Fair enough. I can totally understand that. I mean, you know my philosophy. I love a strong opener and a strong closer, and I think this track, while I do agree with you, might not be one of the highlights. There are definitely far better tracks. I do think it's a strong opener. And going off of my Stones comparison, I'm just reading up on the track. Specifically, this was compared to the style of Exile on Main Street, which would totally make sense because Exile came out a year prior to this, not even.
I was going to say, it was about that time, I think. So
yeah, and you were talking about that crunching guitar, and there's a lot of that on that record in particular.
And I like that. That's like one of my favorite periods of the Stones. So I think a lot of this stuff jives really well for my taste.
Same for sure. But that's all I have for Watch That Man. Let's move on to track 2, and oh man,
Yeah.
this is a highlight on the record
No
for
kidding,
sure.
yeah.
And that's the title track, Aladdin Sane. First off, I have to say, and I kind of feel like an idiot being a diehard Bowie fan not knowing this, but you know how the track is called Aladdin Sane, parentheses, 1913-1938-1970 question mark?
Yes.
You know what that means.
No.
Okay, so I didn't either until an hour ago. 1913 is the year World War I started.
Oh, yep.
1938 is the year World War II started.
I see.
And the 1970 question mark is him at the end of the track. And if you pull up the lyrics, is him predicting World War III.
Oh, wow, cool. That's interesting.
I never knew that. And I felt like such an idiot not knowing that. And
That's
then I was
pretty
looking
subtle.
at
I don't think you should feel stupid for that. It's a very subtle thing because, I mean, especially for us now. I mean, in the 70s, it was probably like, oh man, that's so weird. But like for us, it's like the 70 question mark has no significance. You know, it's kind of like what is he going on about? You know.
But even like the question mark, I never picked up on that.
Yeah.
I've never really glimpsed at that. Like I always knew that parentheses was there and there were numbers, but I always kind of looked over it. I never really, intentionally noticed it. So even like that question mark, I didn't notice till earlier today.
Well, I should even say too for myself. I had this originally for the longest time. My choice way of listening to this was on my iPod, and I just had the track as Aladdin Sane. It didn't have the dates or anything on it. So I mean,
okay.
Yeah, it's not even until I started looking into it that it's like, oh yeah, it's got this kind of subtitle to it. But interesting.
Sure.
It gives the song a very it enhances the tone, I'll say.
Oh, for sure. And this track is also really when my Mike Garson obsession really comes in, because the standout in this song is definitely that piano, that middle section with that avant-garde, sort of like jazz influence. Like that's not too far out of place of like, I don't know, like a later, Coltrane record or, something like that. I just love it. I was reading up on this track a little bit earlier, and apparently the recorded version is the third take, and the first take he did that piano part in a blues style, and the second take he did it in more of like a Latin style.
Cool.
And I would love to hear those renditions. While I'm sure, it wouldn't change my mind on the song, I think what we got ended up being the superior version. I mean, obviously, Bowie wouldn't have picked this take if he didn't think otherwise, but still, I would love to hear those other two renditions of this track.
Yeah, I think the avant-garde approach was good because it kind of gives the track, especially with now thinking of it with a theme that you're talking about, it gives it a very like uncomfortable sound. It's very disjointed sounding, which works for the track really well. It kind of fits the kind of tone of the song, and just excellent playing, And it's not like how some avant-garde stuff can be. It's not tedious at all, It's just, I don't know. It just suits the song perfectly for some reason.
This track reminds me of a Beatles song in the sense that, and going off of what you just said, that it's experimental, but it's totally accessible as well. And it's balanced well enough where it just works.
It's like something like A Day in the Life, how it kind of gets weird in the middle there. It's kind of got that sort of thing going on, or even
that's the perfect comparison,
or even like a more accessible version of some of the stuff that Pink Floyd was doing in the like kind of really early post Syd Barrett days. Some of that really weird, kind of jarring avant-garde stuff. But it's done. It's interesting that it's done within the confines of essentially a pop song, which is interesting. Because like I also put down on here, like I thought the saxophone and the bass, even though it's a pretty repetitive riff, stands out. It's kind of has like a pop sort of beat, like a doom doo 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 doo. You know, but you have this odd jarring
accessibility
piano
piece,
over it. It's weird. So it's odd. It's like everything but the piano in the track is not as accessible.
This is just bottom line.
Yeah.
It's one of his masterpieces, and this is an interesting track in the sense that while you wouldn't see it as, you know, that first song your average music listener would name, like it's not a Heroes, Fame, Gene Genie, Rebel Rebel, Space Oddity, but it's also I also wouldn't consider it a deep cut at the same time. It's kind of like in that middle in terms of Bowie songs. Now, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of my top 20 favorite David Bowie songs. You know, I think this is just one of his best pieces. Yeah,
it's great. I can't say enough about the song. We didn't even mention, I think his vocals are great on it. He has and the melody of the vocals is really good. It's just one of those pieces. It's one of those Bowie tunes where everything's right. You know, everything stands out pretty well. But particularly that piano is fantastic, and I think it's Bowie that does the sax on that too, which is pretty impressive because there's some pretty good saxophone on this piece too.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if that's Bowie on saxophone.
I'm pretty sure. I think I looked at it today.
Is it?
I'll double check real quick.
And then here's because I've got some facts about this song pulled up in particular. Fun fact: David Bowie's son Duncan, I guess, told Mike Garson about 20 years ago that that piano solo used to give him nightmares. But then eventually he fell in love with it. But it used to give him nightmares, and I can totally see that.
Yeah, I could kind of understand that.
I almost feel like I just thought of this now that piano solo kind of foreshadows the sound that he would go with Diamond Dogs a little bit.
I actually thought the same thing. There's a couple other moments in this album that I think kind of hint towards that too. Also, that is Bowie on sax. I checked.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, cool. So let's talk about track 3.
Drive-In Saturday.
Drive-In Saturday. The best way I could summarize this song is it almost sounds like this Pink Floyd space thing, but also very doo-woppy.
Yeah, that sounds about right, you know. It actually, come to think of it, you're mentioning the doo-woppy thing, it almost sounds like something far less eclectic, but something like Zappa would have done in the early Mothers, where he kind of mixed that doo-wop with psychedelic sort of sound.
Interesting.
Yeah, the intro of the song has that weird kind of spacey acoustic intro. It's kind of strange. This was a grower track for me, I have to tell you.
This was your grower.
Yeah,
okay,
this was a grower
that's funny because I have a grower on this record too.
Today I was listening to it actually. I listened to this album about 4 or 5 times in preparation for this, and today specifically, for some reason, I was listening to it. I was like, this song is great. I was like, I actually really like this song.
That's cool. That's really cool. This one has always been another one of my favorites off the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, I this one's cool. It's got this which is very Bowie post-apocalyptic vibe to it. But also we get the Mick Jagger reference in there.
Yeah.
We get a Carl Jung reference. Young the Foreman prayed at work, which we get a couple Carl Jung references on this record. Side note. Yeah, this is a weird one lyrically. Aside from the references, I can't really pinpoint what it's about exactly, other than just some of the references I pointed out again. But none of the less I love this song, and I always have.
Yeah, this one's really, I never disliked it, but I think the thing is that there's, in my opinion, so many other tracks that stand out more that I felt like, for me, maybe this one got overshadowed a little bit, but I was listening to it, like I said, specifically today, and I was like, yeah, this is really solid. I really like this tune. And it's got that, again, that glam kind of, slight glam vibe to it too, which, suits this whole period of his very well. So
absolutely. Let's move on to track 4, Panic in Detroit. I like this song. I think this is a fan favorite. It's personally never been one of mine. Between the two heavy rockers, this one and the next one, I prefer the following track. But it's got a really cool Mick Ronson riff throughout. Again, I get those Stooges meets Stones vibes. But all in all, I just think it's an okay song.
This is a song that I really like just because it was one of the first Bowie songs I heard because I had that Best of Bowie. And the only 2 tracks they had from Aladdin Sane, I think you can guess, it was this track and the Genie, which we'll talk about later. But even really when I had heard the Best of Bowie, it was kind of like my least favorite. Not least favorite, but like it didn't stand out as much as the other tracks. Kind of odd they chose those two tracks, in my opinion, as the 2 to represent Aladdin Sane and the Best of, because they're really not.
Agreed, yeah. Compared
to some of these other ones, but over the years I've just heard it so much that I love the song. It's to me it's one of those like Bowie classics. It's just. But it was over time that was a grower for me, for sure. I didn't like love it immediately, but again I'm familiar with it. It's comfy, I was like, oh yeah, this is a song I know. When I first started listening to this album, I was like, it's comfy.
Yeah, I can 100%. I can 100% understand where you're coming from, and by all means, it's not a track I dislike. Yeah. I don't know, just because. There are just, for me, so many other highlights, and it's funny because you and I have been throwing that word a lot for this record, but some of your highlights have been very different from mine and vice versa. And just for me personally, this one's not a highlight, which I know many fans would disagree with that.
I think that if that song hadn't become, not a hit, but like so well known, and I hadn't heard it so much, that it would be pretty unremarkable on the album. I think just the fact that, like I said, it's often featured in compilations, and they will play this one occasionally on the radio, and other, and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree. Like if I had just the first time I had heard this song was just through this album, I don't think it would stand out as much as it does. But because it's the song, I'm so familiar with it. That's just how it is,
Well, I'm just looking now. He played this a lot live. He played it on the Ziggy Stardust tour. This was one of the Aladdin Sane songs that debuted on that tour, the Ziggy Stardust tour. He played it on the Diamond Dogs tour. He played it on the Isoler tour, which is the Station to Station tour in 1976. He played it on the Sound and Vision tour, which was a tour that he did in 1990 in between the 2 Tin Machine records. He played it on the Earthling tour, and then he played it on the Reality tour as well. Wow. Yeah.
I will say, as far as the song goes, I do enjoy, like, there's a couple things that, like, today, again, I was listening to it, and I really appreciate the percussion in the song. I think Mick Woodmansey really stands out in this one, actually, because he plays some, I don't know if he's playing some, not bongos, but I think he's playing, maybe like a bongo type of thing. It's the percussion's weird. I like it. It's kind of got like a, not African, but how do I want to say? I'm having a hard time thinking. Like, it's not like just a standard drum kit that he's playing. I'm gonna look it up.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I get where you're going with. Get where you're going with your description. I wouldn't say like an African sound, but I get what you mean. It's not especially for like a rock heavy song like that one. The drumming is not traditional rock drumming. Which I think is really fascinating.
Oh, here we go. No, so here we go. I found it. So I was actually right. Musically, Panic in Detroit has been described as a salsa variation on the Bo Diddley beat and features prominent conga drums and female backing vocals.
Okay.
So there is conga on there. Awesome.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So it has like that weird, like I said, the percussion is pretty interesting actually if you go back and listen to it.
There's also, I forgot to mention, there's a 1979 recording version of Panic in Detroit that's on the deluxe edition of Heathen. Why it ended up on Heathen, I'm not sure if it's a 1979 re-recording, but it's okay. It's worth checking out. The Aladdin Sane version is obviously better.
Cool.
But let's move on to, what is it, track 5, and it's the last track on side 1, Cracked Actor. As I was just saying prior to when we were talking about Panic in Detroit, of the two heavy back-to-back rockers, this is the one I prefer. I just love how catchy and upbeat this song is.
It's heavy too.
It is heavy, yeah. This is definitely one of his heavier songs for sure. Again, we got that Exile Stones meets Stooges. I mean, I know I'm throwing that comparison a lot, but it's just abundant throughout. When I think of the beginning of the episode, when I made the the comparison with this and Ziggy, that this is more of a dirtier version of Ziggy Stardust, this is the first track that comes to mind. Like this song is just, this is pure rock and roll.
Yeah, it's funny, I have in my notes here, I wrote notes, quick little factoid, behind the scenes Sound of Music thing. I write notes about each track, so I have my thoughts together. And when I had originally wrote some of these notes, when I wrote Cracked Actor, or when I wrote about Cracked Actor, I said it was pretty middle of the road. I do not agree with that now. So that was like last week or something. I wrote that down. Well,
I'm glad you changed your mind, because that was one I would have argued with you.
No, I actually, first of all, I like that it's kind of a heavier track, and I actually kind of associated this with it really, especially the guitar, reminds me of some of the heavier T-Rex songs. Specifically 20th Century Boy, it made me think of, actually. It had that really hard glam sound, which is pretty cool. I think I agree that I think it stands out more than something like Panic in Detroit or Watch That Man, for example. It's a really cool track. Very, like I said, I like the heaviness of it. It's very raw sounding.
I do too. It's a banger. The Red Hot Chili Peppers do a really cool cover of this song, which I would highly recommend checking out.
Cool, yeah, I didn't know that. I have to check that out.
Yeah, and speaking of things checking out, just to backtrack really quick. Going back to Aladdin Sane, there's a really good acoustic version that he does in 1999. I think it was actually for the Neil Young benefit concert. Neil Young does these benefit concerts every year, and Bowie was one of the big acts that year, and he does a really great stripped down version of Aladdin Sane that's well worth checking out. It just goes to show you that even though we talked about the highlights of that song is the instrumentation, that the song works very well when it's stripped down at its purest.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
So definitely check that out. And the Chili Peppers cover of Cracked Actor is really good too.
You give me too much homework, man.
I do. All right, so let's move on. Now we're at side 2, track 7, or
Can I make a
track
statement?
1. Oh, go ahead.
I think side 2 overall is stronger than side 1.
I 100% agree.
Okay, cool.
Which, let's be clear. Side 1 is pretty amazing.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, but
this isn't like a hunky-dory situation where side 1 is clearly the contender as the stronger side, although I will still continue to defend side 2 of hunky-dory. I would say for Aladdin Sane, you could make some arguments for either side.
Yeah.
But I do agree. Side 2, I think, is the better side.
And even Ziggy Stardust had a stronger first side than second side, whereas I think Aladdin Sane definitely is probably the most balanced album in this regard up until this point. One of them, at least.
Yeah, now that I think about it, out of these his sixth record. Out of the first six, I would agree this is his most consistent.
Yeah.
And it's very well sequenced as well too. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
This is, I'm really big onto sequencing.
Same.
If you listen to any of the King Crimson episodes, I nitpick a couple of their records in terms of sequencing. This record is sequenced very well. I would not make any changes. Maybe there's one song I would remove. We'll get to that track in a couple minutes, but other than that, I would not change the sequencing of this record.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. Nothing overstays its welcome. It kind of transitions between different types of sounds, which I always like, and it at no point gets boring, which is nice,
Agreed, yeah. Oh, come on. We got to talk about this song. This is one of my favorite tracks.
This has been one of, like... So I'll get more into what I was about to say when we do our synopsis of the album, but I'll just say that Time always stood out to me. Anytime I heard this record, I mean, since the first time, really.
Yeah, ugh. I love this song. It is so weird.
Yeah,
but it works. This is like Bowie at his freakiest, and again, Mike Garson's piano playing throughout the track, and Mick Ronson's arrangement. This song is so good, and so good.
I really love the lyrics, especially the line "in Quaaludes and red wine." It's such a cool line for some reason.
Yeah, the lyrics are great. This song's so good. Now, unlike Aladdin Sane, this one I would make the case is a extremely underrated David Bowie song.
Yes.
I love this song is very Jacques Brel influence, who we'll actually talk about briefly on the Ziggy Stardust soundtrack, because Bowie does a cover of one of Jacques Brel's songs. But if you're familiar with his music, Time is like a freakier version of his music, essentially. Again, we get the very avant-garde jazz influence from Mr. Garson. This is very European influence, which Bowie was a guy that was always watching out for contemporary music. Specifically European music, which we'll really get into in depth about when we get to Station and the Berlin trilogy. But I hear a lot of European influence from this, era of the 70s for sure.
And there's also in this song, you could tell there's a bit of influence, I would imagine, on him, just especially with that piano in the intro. It has that kind of old school film sort of, because obviously he was also extremely influenced by other things aside from music, especially theater and stuff like that. So it gives me that kind of like vaudevillian vibe or something, that weird piano kind of. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It's a weird. Makes me think of like an old timey kind of, I don't know, like film or something. It's like some music you'd hear in that, specifically the piano, but like kind of more. But sort of on acid, I don't know how to describe it,
That's a good description. Yeah. That's a very good description. This was another song that they that Mike Garson, David Bowie tribute band. This was a song that they played. And they played a lot of Aladdin Sane songs that I'm thinking about.
Lucky dude.
I know. I should pull up that set list. Maybe if we have time, I'll pull that up at the end of the episode. But yeah, so they performed this song, and they had, I'm going to blank out on her name, but for a lot of the songs, they had this female singer, and she does lead vocals for this song, and she rips it. I mean, like, Mr. Bowie was definitely, I'm not like a big religious guy, but like Mr. Bowie was definitely like, up above. Was like, yeah, you know what, you're like, you're ripping, lady.
She was channeling her Bowie, her inner
That's
Bowie.
That's right. You're making me proud right now. Like it was that good. This is the song I could probably just do a whole podcast on.
Yeah, and it's like lyrically, it kind of it's some of that existential kind of some of those similar kind of existential themes that he tends to revisit. Time flexes like a whore, falls wanking on the floor, that kind of thing. It's giving sort of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like he's using like a lot of metaphors to describe how time passes. I don't know, and it's got this kind of weird sort of like almost slightly humorous vibe to it, actually.
It does, and I was looking at some live versions. Yeah. First of all, this song is one of the other Aladdin Sane songs on the Ziggy Stardust soundtrack, and I will say he rips this song live. Like, I feel like this would have been a song that would have been really challenging to sing live, but he, for the most part, he really nails it.
Yeah.
But what I'm kind of fascinated, but also like, I know this is not going to be good, is apparently he played this song on the Glass Spider tour, which I don't know if you're familiar with the Glass Spider tour. That was the like big tour he did in the late 80s in support for, what's that album called? Never Let Me Down. And it's very 80s. This was like peak big cheese campy production.
Yeah, a lot of synthesizers and stuff. Yeah.
I can only imagine what this song would sound like.
Yeah.
But 80s.
It's great. It really is a fantastic song. Highlight of the album, in my opinion.
For sure. Which that brings us next to The Prettiest Star. And for me, this was my album grower. Or my song grower off the album.
It's a nice piece.
It is. And, it's always a song that I thought was just okay. And look, I'll still go on and say that it's not a highlight off the record, but it's just a good song. I love a lot of the vocals on it. This one actually, for me, feels very T-Rex.
Yeah, it's got kind of a doo-woppy sound to it too. I always thought it's a bit ballady, But yeah, I could see the T-Rex, like some of the more poppier T-Rex tunes, something like
Mark Bolan plays guitar on this song. There you go.
Oh well, there you go. Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah.
And this is all right. So we're gonna need to do, after this episode, in between this and Diamond Dog, some extensive research, because this is saying that Tony Visconti produced this track.
Weird. Yeah, we're gonna have to follow up on this one, guys. We didn't research this one well enough.
Maybe that'll be the our opening segment for Diamond Dogs.
Yeah.
We'll break down what records Tony Visconti produced and what ones he didn't, because it's bugging me now.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, there's really nothing special about this song.
Kind of middle of the road, like I said, with "Watch That Man" for me, but it's a good tune. I like it. It's catchy.
It is. I enjoy it. It's on my Bowie mix playlist. I just think it's a fun track. I don't really have anything more to say beyond that.
Yeah,
but
same. It's a good, like I said, very doo-wop influence, very glammy. Very. Sorry to use that word, but this was that period, and fits the album well, I think.
I agree. So then let's move on to track 3 of side 2, my least favorite track off the record, and that's "Let's Spend the Night Together," which is a Rolling Stones song. Obviously, I prefer the Stones version, because this is a great song, of course, but I don't know. I'm always, and I guess I'll touch base on this more when we get to pinups. Bowie covers can be rough. I can't think of a single David Bowie cover that I've heard where I've gone, it's okay. It's either I don't think it's really that great, or I love it. There's no middle of the ground when it comes to David Bowie covers.
He's got such a style of his own that it's really hard to hear him emulate somebody else. That's the problem, I think.
I 100% agree with that, because my favorite Bowie covers are the ones where he makes it Bowie.
Yeah, like we were talking about, like you're saying how "Watch That Man" kind of has that Stooges sound. You'd rather hear a song like that where he quote unquote chameleons, you know, the Stooges, and it's like, oh, he just took the Stooges and made it, you know, into a Bowie song, you know. Same with I'm trying to think of other examples, but you know, we've talked about countless other examples where you can hear the influence of his stuff. You know, something like Pink Floyd. You know, I know in Pinups he does a Pink Floyd cover. He's better off like injecting some of that sound because I know he's a big Sid fan into one of his tunes. You know, he's just better at that than trying to actually cover it. So I would agree with that.
I agree. I would have almost rathered his Chuck Berry cover on here instead.
Mm-hmm. However,
if I had to pick.
That being said, I actually really like his cover of "Let's Spend the Night Together." I like the weird, like avant-garde kind of spacey intro in the beginning, and yeah, I think he does it justice. Actually, I will be quite honest with you. "Let's Spend the Night Together" isn't necessarily my favorite Stone song, so to me, I think he did fine. You know, he did a pretty good job of a song that I'm not huge into anyway. So.
Fair enough. And you know, "Let's Spend the Night Together" is an earlier Stone song. So like, you know, like the Beatles, you know, their early stuff is, you know, like while they're great songs or not, you know, what the band would eventually become. But I will say I still prefer the Stones version. I do like that sort of, like you pointed out in the beginning, that spacey avant-garde sound, whatever that is, the beginning of the song. But aside from that, I would rank this as my least favorite song off the record, personally.
Real quick side note, if we want to start disagreeing on something, I think our opinion of the Stones might be pretty different. So that would be interesting someday. Just putting that out there.
You cut off there. What did you say?
I said if you ever want to disagree on something, I think our opinion of the Stones might be pretty different.
Really?
Yeah, because you were saying about the early Stones. That's my favorite period of the Stones. This is just one of my least favorite songs from that period, which is
okay.
Which is pretty interesting.
I'm without getting too far track, I'll just tell you, I am. Excuse me. I feel like now I'm losing my voice. I am the Mick Taylor era. That's my Stones.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
and I'll leave it at that.
We'll get there eventually.
For sure. Okay, so then next track, of course, second to last track,
the Gene Genie.
The Gene Genie.
On his back. Yeah.
I briefly said this before, but Bowie just has songs, so many songs for that matter, that everyone knows. Mm-hmm. You know, Space Oddity. I would probably say Changes, Life on Mars, maybe. Rebel Rebel, Heroes, Fame, and then, of course, Gene Genie. Like, this is just one of those songs everybody knows. Whether you know it's David Bowie or not is, you know, different, but everyone, I feel like this is just a really well-known song.
Yeah, for this album especially. And I think it's like a half step behind stuff like Life on Mars in terms of, like, how many people know it. Like Life on Mars or Space Oddity or something like that. But it is still one of his biggest songs.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I would definitely say that I'm a bigger fan of both of those songs that you just named. But this is still a killer song. There's just no denying. From that opening riff, the ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, doo-doo. Oh, this song is great.
Yeah, the
riff, really is.
The dun 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 na, and the harmonica is like really, really good in it. I love it.
I think while still maintaining that Iggy Pop Stooges sound, lyrically kind of reminds me more of a Velvet Underground song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see it. I don't know the Velvet Underground very well, but just from what I heard, I could actually see what you're talking about, I think. You know?
Yeah. Gene Genie. What else is there to really say?
I don't really know what there is to say. It's one of those songs that everybody knows. I mean, it's a catchy hook, cool, kind of quirky lyrics, great riff. Like I said, I love the harmonica in it. It's just a straight up, like, awesome rocker, you know, iconic glam rock tune. Probably, you know, if somebody were to make a list of the greatest glam rock songs, I'm sure it would be in like the top 10 or something, you know?
I feel like, yeah, totally. I feel like we've come across that a couple times with both the David Bowie season as well as King Crimson were some of the bigger songs. Like, I really don't have much to say about it. Like, what more is there to add?
Well, in a sense, it's kind of like, and this is why I love doing the discography discussion so much, which I'm sure you would agree with too. Sorry for this brief tangent, everybody. We'll make this quick. I like deep diving the albums because, I don't know, I've never gone so deep into discussing Cracked Actor before, or, you know what I mean? Or Drive-In Saturday, or some of these kind of deeper tracks, so
yeah, I guess that's a good point, and that's it gives us more of that opportunity to talk about those songs, the ones that people don't talk about as much. Because some of the ones you said,
everybody knows the Gene Genie is a great song, and Space, like people who know Bowie anyway, and Space Oddity and Life on Mars and Ziggy Stardust and stuff, but like, you have gems like that song Quicksand off of Hunky Dory, or something like Lady Stardust off of Ziggy Stardust, or even like we were saying, like not a deep cut, but something like Aladdin Sane. I think the casual listener would probably hear that and be like, "Whoa, that's Bowie." That's kind of strange. It's a different one. Or even Time. I don't think Time is very well known either, and it's like, what a great tune. It deserves more attention than it has.
Right.
So, like, it's certainly a way better song than Panic in Detroit. No offense to that song, but...
You know what? You just had me thinking when you were listing some of those songs. Just talking about Aladdin Sane and these tracks. Boy, is doing the top 20 going to be really difficult for the last episode.
Yeah. Because there's...
It is already going to be harder than doing King Crimson.
We might have to...
At least...
I will say that Bowie has a significantly larger discography. We might want to consider...
We might have to do a top 30.
Doing like at least a top 30, I think.
Top 30 favorite songs. Something to think about. I mean, that's going to be way down the road when we get to that. But that is something to actually think about, is doing a top 30 favorite songs as opposed to... 20, because oh god, is that going to be hard.
Yeah, and there's certain songs like I feel like have to go in there by default, like I don't know, it's weird, kind of like what you were saying, like, I think you said like, I had to put 21st Century Schizoid Man because it's 21st Century Schizoid Man. It's like, I feel like a song, for example, would be in there anyway, but even if I wasn't thinking about it, it's like, I gotta put Life on Mars in. How could you not put Life on Mars in, or something,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that to an extent, but then I also disagree.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like even thinking about a top 30, like as much as I love the Gene Genie, I don't think it would be in my top 30.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, I don't think it'd be in my top 30 either. I can already say, I think, after just the first, what are we at? Record 6, and we got a long way to go, man. So
yeah,
but shall we move on to the final track and everything?
Yes. Sorry, I was trying to pull up while you were talking. I was trying to pull up that David Bowie tribute band set list. I'll keep trying to find that. But while I'm doing that,
well, while you do that,
closer.
Go ahead. The closer.
The closer. My favorite track off the record. Lady Grinning Soul.
You love your closers, it seems.
I was going to make a weird joke, but I'm not going to go there. Yes, this song, like Time, is so underrated. Like, this is a masterpiece, this song. Like, why aren't people talking about this track? Why?
I agree with that. I think... maybe the last two, I think Ziggy Stardust and Hunky Dory, you had a much more favorable opinion of the closers than I did, but this is an instance where I completely agree with you. Yeah, I absolutely love the last song, and ends the album on just a real high note, and I like that. So,
this was another one I got to see live as well, and Mike Garson was briefly talking about this song, and he said that David always considered this as one of his best songs that he ever wrote and recorded.
Wow. Yeah, I could understand that, definitely.
So the man himself and I can agree on something, that this is one of his greatest songs.
I would I don't know if I want to make that statement yet. But it's certainly one of the best songs on this album, absolutely, and I really love it. I love that blend of piano and guitar, that like acoustic guitar sound in this song. Ugh. And the vocals are like it's kind of like very dreamy, and I don't know, it's just like a really cool track, man. It's got an awesome tone and atmosphere to it, and it's just one of those songs that like immediately I was just like, all right, yeah, this is great. You know?
Yeah, I mean, this song, I could also just do a separate podcast about this song. Just to give a little background on Lady Gritting Soul. Mm-hmm. I just had it pulled up here. So I've never heard of this person before, but Claudia Lanier. Mm-hmm. Here we go with my pronunciation again. That might not be pronounced correctly, but that's okay. She was like an American soul singer from the early 70s, and she was a huge inspiration on this song. Mm-hmm. And apparently she revealed that after Bowie's death, that back in 2014, Bowie had called her and told her that the song was written about her.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Again, Mike, now it's just redundant at this point, but the standout is Mike Garson's piano again.
And I would argue that guitar. I think the blend of the two makes for some, I don't know, I just love that blend of piano and acoustic guitar.
What I would put over both those things, as great as they are, is honestly Bowie's vocals.
Yes, yeah.
His vocals are amazing in this song.
Yeah.
I would maybe argue this might be his best vocal performance.
I could, yeah. Honestly, yeah. I would, it's certainly up there for sure. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, this song's perfect. I don't want to add anything else because, like I said, I could just do a whole separate podcast on this.
That's great. I have a feel we seem to be very much on the same page with this record, so I like it. Do you want to sum it up? Are we gonna talk about like bonus tracks and stuff like that?
So we actually don't have bonus tracks.
Oh, okay, good.
For this one, I mentioned the 1979 recorded version of Panic in Detroit, which is oddly a bonus song off of Heathen. So yeah, that's a thing. But yeah, other than that, there aren't any bonus tracks. I take that back. I'm getting ahead of myself. Hold on. If you have the 2003 version of this record, the first recorded version of John I'm Only Dancing is on it. We talked about that in the last episode. You can get a mono mix of... Oh, we didn't even talk about All the Young Dudes.
Oh, yeah. All the Young Dudes.
All the Young Dudes was written around this period. And, of course, he recorded it around this time. His version didn't get released till years later. Of course, he had wrote it for Mott the Hoople, which, I would argue I probably like their version better than Bowie's. But All the Young Dudes was written and recorded around this period.
I actually like Bowie's version better.
Really?
And that's mostly because I heard it a lot more first, so I associate the song with him over Mott the
So
Hoople.
actually, in terms of superior versions, in my opinion, I like a couple live versions by Bowie I've heard. Mm-hmm. There's a really great live version of All the Young Dudes off of the Reality Tour, and there's one off another live album that's a little earlier in his career that's really good too. So to me, the definitive version of All the Young Dudes is actually the Bowie live versions. Mm-hmm. But in terms of studio, I think I might like Mott the Hoople's version better than Bowie's.
And it is the it did become a very popular song, and probably Mott the Hoople's biggest hit, I think. So
it is their biggest hit, yeah.
Yeah, it is I love the Mott the Hoople version. I'm not knocking it, but I think I do like the Bowie version slightly more.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's it for bonus tracks. So why don't we do our top 3 and give our final thoughts?
I think honestly that you and I have the same top 3, and if you'll permit me, I will say them and you can say whether you agree or not.
Go for it.
Okay, I'm not going to put them in any order. I'll say what they are, and then we can each talk about what order we put them in. Aladdin Sane, Time, Lady Grinning Soul.
Wow. So, that would be my 3. But you know me, I have to give an order, of course, and I do have an order.
Okay.
It would be Lady Grinning Soul, Time, Aladdin Sane.
It would be, for me, Time, Aladdin Sane, Lady Grinning Soul, I think. So it's so close. I mean, I think all 3 of those pieces are some of the best, like what you said, some of the best stuff he's ever done, at least from this period.
For sure.
I love all of it, yeah. And we're talking like a hair difference between them, but I think I have to give Time my number 1 because it really was the song that stood out to me when I first heard the album, and it's probably the one I enjoy the most still. But all 3, like you said, man, Mike Garson, like he is heavily featured on those, and all 3 actually feature some of Bowie's best vocals too, honestly.
Oh, for sure. I know I made the case that I think Lady Grinning Soul might be his greatest vocal performance, but this record as a whole, I would also make the argument as a whole album has some of Bowie's best vocals.
Yeah, I would say so. I was tempted to put the Genie in, like I was thinking about this today, what 3 I would pick. I was really tempted. I was like, the Genie should be in there, and I was like, nah, I like I like all 3 of those songs better than the Genie, but that would probably be honorable mention, maybe my 4th, I would say.
Yeah, so I would even just looking like Drive-In Saturday would just be my number 4. Like it was really difficult not putting that in my 3.
Yeah.
But I think I would put Watch That Man ahead. I would put Cracked Actor ahead, and then maybe Genie after.
Yeah. Yeah. Either way,
for me personally,
I think the album as a whole though is a really great piece, and it was very easy to listen to this because this is, as I might have said, my wife's favorite Bowie album, so we listened to it quite a bit.
That's awesome.
So,
and I love again that we have all the different order, but we have the same 3. That's amazing. I think that might have happened on a King Crimson album. I don't remember which one.
I think it happened on a couple of King Crimson albums.
Maybe, okay.
It's possible.
But either way, I love that for this record that our 3 ended up being the same.
Really good. I want to say, if I may go into my overall thoughts, this was an album that, spoiler alert here, Diamond Dogs is my favorite Bowie record. And, Ziggy Stardust was always right there, and Hunky Dory. I think that when I was in the prime of my Bowie, my Bowie years, we'll say, I don't know, I have no good term for it, but when I was first really getting into Bowie and I would listen to him all the time and stuff, and I was getting into his records, I think this one got overshadowed. I mean, I think it's understandable why, because you have, again, Hunky Dory, Ziggy Stardust, Diamond Dogs. I think this one got a little overshadowed, and it wasn't that I didn't like this album, I just think that it just didn't at the time stand out as much to me, but over the years it's really become, in my opinion, on the same level. I mean, and
interesting.
In some ways it's superior in some, like, for example, like we were talking about, up until now, best sequencing of songs on a Bowie record. Thus far. I hadn't really thought of it till we discussed it, but I would definitely agree with it.
Thus far, the sequencing's the best on this record. There's already a few that I would make a case that are even better.
Yeah.
But out of the first 6, this one without a doubt has the best sequencing.
And this has probably had the most growers for me over the years, and even just in the recent listening to it. Like I said, Drive-In Saturday was really a grower for me for this one, and Lady Grinning Soul, while I always liked it, I think I really appreciated it upon revisiting it this time. So yeah, I have to say this album, it didn't get the attention it deserved from me back in the day. So I'm really glad we revisited it.
Yeah, I'm as far as my final thoughts, and I'm happy to hear that, by the way. It's interesting that you said that for you, this was the one that was sort of like the underdog because, excuse me, sorry about that. Because for me, Diamond Dogs was actually that underdog, and I don't want to get too into it because I want to save that for the next episode.
Okay.
But I mentioned in the first episode that Bowie, like, you were for the most part my introduction to Bowie, But 2013 was like really like when I became fanboy Bowie, right around when The Next Day came out. And so for me, the records that were on heavy rotation was I stayed away from Ziggy Stardust because I kind of went through this like weird boycott of like, that's like the one everyone knows. So for the ones for me that were on heavy rotation were The Next Day, because it was the newest one, Low, Heroes, and Aladdin Sane.
Okay.
I love this record. This one is one of my favorites. I said that for me, as great and as iconic as Ziggy Stardust is, I put both this and Hunky Dory above it. I just prefer those two records, but again, Ziggy is obviously great. To me, it's a more enhanced version of that album. I again would have loved to have gotten another record or two with both Mike Garson and Mick Ronson. Because it'd be interesting to see what those two would have done, and influenced Bowie. But of course, we didn't get that. But this is a highlight in the Bowie canon for sure.
And can I say too, because we talked a lot about Bowie himself and Mike Garson and stuff. But as far as like, and I'm not going to count Pinups because it's a cover record. But as far as like a swan song for Mick Ronson, like, wow, Like he definitely has his moments on this record, and if his last like real record with Bowie is going to be Aladdin Sane, then what a way to end this period for him of his time with Bowie,
Oh, for sure, yeah. Okay, so because I'm looking at time, and we are getting into we are starting to get into overtime here, so I just finally pulled up this set list.
Okay.
Do you want me to share it with you really quick?
Yes, but can we do a potty break?
You want a potty break?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
All right, just give me a second. Okay, I'll be right back.
That's fine. All right, so as I just said, I did pull up that set list. Do you want me to share that really quick? Save it for the end of the episode, or save it for...
This is the part of the episode that we're going to call Andy's monologue. So this is where, and this works out well because I'm still having a lot of throat pain from being sick. You can go through the set list, and you wanted to just briefly touch on both Pinups and the Ziggy Stardust movie soundtrack. So the floor is yours, my friend.
The floor is mine. A little break for you in the voice. Okay, so this, for the most part, this set list, as I was looking back, I forgot how amazing it was. For the most part, it really doesn't get better than this. So, there were several guest singers throughout. Mostly they were done by this guy named Bernard Fowler, who was a backup singer for the Stones touring band. Gabby Moreno is that girl that I mentioned earlier, who does vocals on a lot of songs. And then we've got some other people throughout. Another guy that stood out was a guy named Joe Sumner, who is Sting's son, fun fact.
Wow, okay.
As well as the dude from Living Colour, the singer from Living Colour, Corey Glover. So those are primarily the singers. So, all right, so here's the set list. They opened up with one of my favorite Bowie songs, Bring Me the Disco King, which is the closing track off of Reality. The song, I can't wait to get to Reality because of this song. So, Bring Me the Disco King is the opener. Rebel Rebel. Moonage Daydream.
Yes.
Fame. Changes. Space Oddity. Quicksand.
Oh, you must love that.
Stay. The Gene Genie.
Yeah.
5 Years. Lady Grinning Soul.
God, you must have went nuts on 5 years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so here these three alone, ready? 5 Years, Lady Grinning Soul.
Oh, man.
And then Station to Station.
Oh, God, yeah, that's great.
Ziggy Stardust. Time.
Ugh.
Wild as the Wind.
Nice.
And that was a duet between Gabby Moreno and Bernard Fowler, and it was freaking great. All the Young Dudes, Suffragette City, Young Americans, Changes Again, and I'll briefly talk about why that song came up again. Because the first time they played Changes, Corey Glover, the singer from Living Colour, was supposed to be the guest singer for that track. He was taking a nap. And no, that is not a joke. He was taking a nap. So instead, at the last second, Joe Sumner, Sting's son, stepped in. And while we got Corey Glover doing it again later, because Mike Garson basically was like, hey, let's just play Changes again. I will tell you the Joe Sumner version was the better version.
That's funny.
He ripped in. He got in, like, he was excited that he got to step in. He's like, ooh, I'll sing Changes, and it was just great. Corey Glover's version was good too, but Joe Sumner, he won that one as far as the two versions of Changes. So then the encore, another favorite song, Loving the Alien.
Nice. Yes.
Life on Mars, Aladdin Sane, Heroes.
Oh man, wow, that's quite a set. Quite a set list.
So just
that's awesome.
Take that in.
I'll take that in. Wow, that's a really solid set list.
Like that covers Bowie. Like I would say the only song that, like, it's two songs that would just complete this in terms of essential would be Sounded Vision and Ashes to Ashes. Other than that, this is perfect.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can't argue with that set list.
No, it's... Yeah. So
awesome.
I'm glad I found that because I had to share that with you. That definitely took some digging, but well worth it. I might make a set list of this, or a playlist of this set list now.
Please comment that, post the link to that on this video if you do, and also send it to me.
Okay, yeah, no, will do for sure.
Okay,
so let's quickly, I want to wrap this thing up, so let's quickly get into pinups, and then we'll talk about the Ziggy Stardust soundtrack.
Okay.
So pinups, for those of you that aren't aware, was a covers album that was released in between Aladdin Sane and Diamond Dogs. It is absolutely not essential to the Bowie canon, minus one song, at least in my opinion, minus one song that I think was a minor hit single, not sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read each track. I'll mention who was the original artist that sang the song, and maybe a couple of these I might just give super brief opinions on, and feel free to jump in if you have anything you want to share about any of these songs.
Okay.
So we have Friday on My Mind by the Easy Beats. Pretty similar to the original, but it's good though. Track 2 is my favorite song off the record, Sorrow by the Mercies. And this was the song I do believe was somewhat of a hit single. But it's great. This would be my favorite, and I think it could have maybe worked on Aladdin Sane. Maybe.
So put that on Aladdin Sane instead of the Stones cover, and
let's
then
spend the
just
night together. Yeah.
Pinups.
Then we have Don't Bring Me Down, which is by the Pretty Things. Shapes of Things by the Yardbirds. Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere by The Who. This one was pretty good. Where Have All the Good Times Gone by the Kinks. The Kinks are one of my favorite bands. Bowie's covered the Kinks several times throughout this career, and this is a pretty good cover.
Yeah, the Who and the Kinks ones aren't that bad, really. They're pretty good.
I just realized I read side 2 first, so
okay.
Every song I just listed is start to finish of side 2. So now we'll read side 1. Rosalind by the Pretty Things again. You'll see a lot of repetitions with the artists that he covers. Here Comes the Night by Them. Isn't Them Van Morrison's band?
Yeah, it's Van Morrison's
That's
band,
right.
Yeah.
I Wish You Would, the Yardbirds. See Emily Play by Pink Floyd. You got a Syd Barrett track there. This one's probably one of the better covers in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. He has a good voice for Syd Barrett.
Agreed. Yeah.
He played live with David Gilmour a few years ago, or by that I mean probably over 10 years ago now, and he did, I think, Arnold Lane, and he did a really good job.
He did Arnold Lane and Comfortably Numb, and those would be examples of what we were talking about before. Bowie doing a cover that makes it Bowie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Arnold Lane is definitely like I could see. He that's a good choice for him.
Sure.
Anyway, go ahead.
I Can't Explain by The Who is the last track off side one, and that's also a pretty decent cover. So that's Pinups. Again. There's actually 2 bonus songs as well that I've not checked out. He does a cover of Growing Up by Bruce Springsteen. Bowie actually had a pretty big admiration for Bruce Springsteen. Fun fact.
I'm kind of not surprised because Bowie was he was a songwriter, and Bruce Springsteen is, despite what your personal opinion is of him,
one of the greatest songwriters,
is objectively a great songwriter.
Sure. And then we talked about him earlier, Jacques Brel, a cover of Port of Amsterdam, which again is by Jacques Brel. So that's Pinups. Again, it's not essential. It's a hard one to listen to. If you become David Bowie fanatics like Rob and I, then this is one I would check out towards the end of Bowie's canon. At least that's my
if you're
opinion.
interested in hearing him do some covers, it's pretty good. But even some of my favorite bands, like a band like Rush, they did a good job with Feedback, which was their cover album, and I barely ever listened to it because I don't know. They have so many other songs. I don't really need to listen. I've heard. I think they do Crossroads. I don't need to hear that again. I've heard it a million times. So.
All right. So let's quickly get into Ziggy Stardust, the motion picture.
Now this is where I'm gonna say I was a bad boy because not only have I not listened to this, but I've never even seen the movie.
You bad
intended
boy.
to, but just never have. So believe me, I'll eventually get to it.
So there's I bad boy too, in the sense that I didn't get around to rewatching the movie. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but I did make it a point about a week ago to listen to the soundtrack. And Bowie live albums are interesting in the sense that most of them are not that essential. This one might be one of the more essential ones. I would say of this era, the essential live Bowie record would be Live at Santa Monica. But the benefit of Ziggy Stardust soundtrack is you get some Aladdin Sane songs as well, where you don't get that for Live at Santa Monica. So, like Pinups, I'm going to name all the songs that are on here and maybe just give brief opinions on a couple.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with the correct side this time. Side 1, track 1, we have Hang On To Yourself, which I think really serves as a great live opener. And this version of Hang On To Yourself is even more energetic. It's faster than the studio version, and it just works. It's a great opener. Then we have track 2 is Ziggy Stardust. Track 3 is Watch That Man, which I was surprised how well the execution was, because Watch That Man, we talked about earlier, has the backing vocals, and there's just a lot going on in that track, so it's executed very well live. Track 4 is pretty cool. We get a medley here, which consists of Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud. So we're going back to Space Oddity there.
Yeah.
So it's Wild Eyed Boy from Free Cloud, All the Young Dudes, and Oh You Pretty Things.
You pretty. Just hearing the title of that song.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
That to me out of the medley is the highlight, is the Oh You Pretty Thing segment. Then we have a pretty killer version of track 5, Moonage Daydream.
Nice. Yeah. That's essential.
Of course. Yeah. Then we have Space Oddity, which it's Space Oddity. And then track 7, the highlight, in my opinion, is Bowie's cover of My Death. Once again by Jacques Brel. First of all, it's just Bowie and Mike Garson. That's it.
That's pretty great.
If there's any song you're going to check out on this record, it's My Death.
I'll definitely watch the movie at some point. Like I want to do that.
Bowie tells the audience in the beginning to shut up because it starts out very quiet and the audience is cheering. He's like, "Shut up!" Very subtle. Shut up. It's amazing. This would be one of those exceptions where I would cheat, and maybe not. It would end up in my top 30. Just saying. Mm-hmm. I would make a special exception. That's how great it is. So it's the end of side one. Side two opens up with Cracked Actor. Then we get another highlight, Time.
Nice.
Again, it blows my mind how good this is live.
Wow, yeah.
He nails it. And then track 3, another highlight. We get a almost 10-minute version of Width of the Circle. And actually, I want to double check something because I could have sworn the version I listened to was 15 minutes. Yes, it was. Okay, so if you listen to the Spotify version of this, the version of Width of a Circle is 15 minutes. Actually clocks under just 16 minutes. And it's so good. It's like Mick Ronson guitar riffage machinery.
That's very appealing.
and that song for me is a highlight off The Man Who Sold the World. So I think this was one of the last times that Bowie played Width of the Circle was on this tour. Mm-hmm. So it's great to get a 15-minute version of it. So that's worth checking out. Then we get Changes, which is pretty good. We got the cover of Let's Spend the Night Together. Meh. We get Suffragette City. Then we get a great cover of White Light, White Heat by the Velvet Underground. And this actually song was almost going to be included on Pinups, and I'm not sure what the reason was for not including it, but Bowie covered the Velvet Underground immensely throughout his career. And the Velvet Underground were one of his biggest early inspirations, and this is a great cover of that song. That's White Light, White Heat. And then we close with the what, if you're a Bowie fan, a very well-known version of Rock and Roll Suicide. And the reason why I say that is because this version is the version where he says that this is the last show that we're ever going to do.
Oh, yeah, you talked about this last time.
Yeah. And it's basically him, and I think it's fitting that Rock and Roll Suicide is the song, like he does this, but it's him basically putting the Spiders from Mars to rest. So that's what makes, that alone is what makes this particular rendition of Rock and Roll Suicide special, to me at least, and it's just a pretty good version of it as well.
Cool.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is one definitely worth checking out. Again, as far as this era, I would say Live at Santa Monica is the superior live record, but this one is very good. I would almost say watch the film first.
That's what I plan to do, yeah.
Yeah, but it's, I can't, My Death, like I can't, like that along with Time and Lady Grinning Soul. It's like, it's up there as far as like mind-boggling. Like this is like, why aren't people talking about this song more? To me, at least. So
it'll be interesting to put that top 30 together. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you for monologuing all of that because I didn't really do my homework with that, so I apologize.
Yeah, no,
Thank you for doing all that.
So before we wrap up, and boy, do we need to wrap up because I'm getting very hungry.
Me too.
Do you want to talk about what we're going to be doing next?
So, okay, I'm going to make it brief. We decided that we want to take a little break from Bowie, just for basically an episode or recording session, whatever you want to say. And we wanted to change it up a little bit because primarily what we've been doing on this channel and this podcast has been doing the Discography series, which will not go anywhere, by the way. It's still the primary thing we're doing.
No.
Seeing Bowie through and then going to the next artist, whoever that may be. We've had a million other ideas of things to do, and
which we've mentioned throughout the show before.
Sorry?
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying, which we've mentioned before, that we have other ideas that we've wanted to pursue.
Yeah. And this is just a basic thing that I think people would probably be interested in if you like our opinions on things, is that we're going to each do a top 10 list of our favorite bands. It's going to be in one video. I'm going to do some heavy editing to it, so we'll have some... If you guys who actually watch us on or listen to us on YouTube don't just have to stare at an album cover. You can actually see some stuff. I'll put the albums on there, and I'll throw some footage of various bands and artists that we do. But yeah, we're gonna do a top 10. It's a top 10 bands and artists, and it should be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to say why I'm really looking forward to it is that Rob and I, back in the day when we first became really good friends, we've always just had a mutual love of music. But I would say when we first became friends that our music tastes were very similar. Whereas I think now there's still absolutely common ground. I mean, if Bowie and Crimson are anything to go by. But I definitely think...
There's a lot different, too,
It's a lot different. It's drifting. And it's not really something we've talked about that much. Nope. So I'm really looking forward to doing this sort of one-off thing where, I'm sure he's going to throw some curveballs at me that I'm surprised are, amongst his top 10. And I'm thinking he probably thinks the same about mine. So I'm looking forward to talking about other bands and artists with you that I don't normally talk about, whether it's just because
that should be interesting.
I discovered them, a little more recently, or whatever the case may be. So I'm really excited.
I think you're not going to be super surprised by all of mine, but I also don't have my list together. But I am curious to see where both of our tastes have changed a lot, and I'm predicting there's going to be 2 or 3 crossovers.
Me too. Most. Yeah, I think max 3. There's 2 I definitely know, but there's a third one that I think is more than likely going to be a crossover as well.
Yeah, I think I know. I honestly know the 3 that you're thinking of,
but don't share it.
Yeah, I'm not going to share it. No. So that'll be that. So it may be a little bit until you see that. In fact, you might actually get the Diamond Dogs episode. I was saying this to Andy before we recorded. You might get the Diamond Dogs episode even before that because I'm going to have a lot of editing to do, but I hope you guys look forward to that. It's going to be a cool video.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, we're not, we're not dropping the Bowie thing. We're just taking a little break. We talked about this behind mic, that Bowie's a discography that there might be a few more breaks every so often. So we will, pick up and...
Just to change it up.
Do Diamond Dogs, like Rob said. Even though we're going to record the top 10 first, Diamond Dogs more than likely will be released prior to the top 10. And with Diamond Dogs...
how... go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, as far as Diamond Dogs go, we will talk about David live as well. And I would like to make that a little more in-depth than our,
Sure.
Our Ziggy Stardust live, because I do think David live is an essential Bowie live record, but not to get too far ahead. So we will again pick up on Bowie. This is just something we decided to do as a little break. There are other things we wanted to pursue, but yeah, I'm excited. I really can't wait to do this top 10.
Yeah, it's a cool idea, and I think it's going to be really fun. And I would assume you even said it's a good breaking point in the discography to take a break for an episode and do something different. I think, maybe you guys could expect, I'm not going to say right away because we haven't even talked about doing anything else, but just as an example, I could see us doing like the next several albums and then before we get to the Berlin period, taking a break or something. You know what I mean? So on a more like, at a good breaking point to take a break for an episode, I could see us doing this in the future because, like you said, Bowie's discography is immense, so we're gonna need a break from here or there,
for sure.
So,
but
yeah, that's all I had to say.
Cool. So stay tuned for that top 10 favorite bands, artists, both mine and Rob's. And yeah, that's all I got too. So,
and that's Aladdin Sane, guys.
That's Aladdin
Thanks for checking us out. We as always, we appreciate it. Again, drop us a like or give us a subscribe on YouTube if you're listening on there. If you're on on Anchor or potentially in the future one of the other platforms, hope you continue to follow us, and thanks.
All right, guys. Till next time. Bye.
Peace.